Hey everyone, so I wanted to go over a few different ways that we have figured out how to save on chicken feed. If you have chickens, you know that they probably waste their food. We do fill some jars that we leave out in their run all day long, and they are able to eat when they want, and they do waste it when it's dry. We've tried crumble, we've tried pellets, we've tried the whole grains here, and they waste every single kind. So what we leave out in the run now, it's an organic crumble. Our local Costco actually sells it. It's a 50-pound bag for about $27 here in Northern California. And they still waste it. So one thing that we've done to help save on the crumble is every morning we'll wet a bowl of it with water and they will gobble it up. I don't know why the difference between dry crumble and the wet food, but if it makes them eat it, that's fine by me. I'll mix it with water every day if I have to. The other thing that we have discovered is when we had fewer chickens and we had wanted to feed them the healthiest thing we could, we started feeding them the scratch and peck layer feed that's a whole grain. And I guess we kind of raised some bougie chickens who are picky eaters now because they love the grain and they just want it all the time. But when it's dry, they do the same thing. They'll scratch through, find their favorite grains, kick everything else out, and then wait for you to refill their container instead of eating what's on the ground. So two different ways that we saved with the whole grains is one is when they kicked it all out, scoop it out of their run, we throw it in our compost, and it actually will sprout in the compost, and then we can feed the sprouts back to the chickens, and they love it. It's like one of their favorite snacks, and that way we feel like we haven't wasted any of the feed. The other thing that we started doing is we started fermenting the feed. One thing that we really like about the feed, not just that they will eat every last morsel, they love it, but I think they're getting more nutrients out of it. It breaks down a little bit in the fermenting process. It swells up so they can digest it easier. There's also a lot of powdered nutrients in there that when it's dry and they're kicking everything out everywhere, they're not really eating much of that. So when we ferment it and it's all mixed together, they actually get all of the nutrients that are coming in the bag. And the fermenting process is pretty easy. We just use a 3-cup mason jar. You can kind of use any size or style that suits you and works for you and how many chickens you have. And since we leave dry food out for them all the time, we don't necessarily make enough for them to just be full on that alone. It helps cut down on how much of the other food that they're eating. So we just give them enough that they will eat it throughout the day and then kind of pick at the crumble that's in their run. So in the 3-cup jar, I use 1 cup of the scratch and peck grains. You just pour it right in the jar. And then we fill it with water. You don't want to fill it too high. You don't want to go all the way to the top because it does expand. And more than once, I overfilled the jar and it leaked all over the counter and made a huge mess. So learn from my mistakes. Don't fill it too high. And then once you get the water in there, you want to give it a good stir, get all the way to the bottom. You just want to make sure that all the different grains are nice and wet and mixed in. And then all you're gonna do is you're gonna put the lid on top. You just wanna make sure you don't wanna screw it all the way tight. Don't do that. You wanna let air get in there. That's how it's gonna ferment. So we do it just tight enough so flies or anything aren't getting inside, and it's covered, but it's loose enough that air is still getting into the jar. We let that sit for about 2 days before we give it to the chickens. We've kind of experimented with how many days before it gets to the point where they don't really want to eat it, and long enough that it's still fermented and expanded and they do want to eat it. So this is a jar that we prepared ahead. It's been sitting here on the counter for about 2 days. And so we do 2 of these jars. We have 8 chickens. We pour them into a bowl and put it out on their run, and they'll eat the whole thing in 1 day. So all we do each day, you just want to open it up, give it a nice stir, make sure everything is well mixed. And then again, you're gonna put the lid back on, nice and loose, just enough that it's covered, but the air is still getting inside. These 2 jars are ready to feed to the chickens today, so we'll be giving them a nice snack later. I hope you enjoyed that video and it helps you save on some feed if you're new to chickens and you don't know what to do because they're wasting all their food. Maybe this gives you some ideas on how to save on their feed.